All right. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, John Rayon, and my guest today on the Always Direct podcast is Brad Sterl. And his company is RusticCrust.com, and they are the makers of the wood-fired frozen pizza crusts that are sold throughout the United States. This company is no joke. They currently have 150 employees and an annualized revenue rate of 30 mil. So very excited to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on, Brad.
Great, thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So, I like to just dive right in and I did a little research on your company, and you're a restaurant guy for a long time, and then you you got onto the manufacturing side. I want to hear your story and your struggles and how you got to where you are.
That could take 2 days. So no, my original background was all restaurants. I started in the restaurant business in my teens. I bought my first restaurant at 20. Eventually had two different restaurant chains of one of 8 higher end restaurants, another chain before this company. We had 21 higher end pizza restaurants. So, and this really evolved from the restaurant chain, the last pizza chain that I had. And so it was kind of unique at how I ended up where I am. I never would have expected this.
Yeah. So I'm a restaurant guy. I don't know if you know anything about me or not. We have like 7 restaurants with 5 open, 1 opening right now, and 1 signed open, 2 open. I've opened 10 restaurants in my life. Love the restaurant business. It's a hell of a business. It's crazy business, as you know. So I want to know which one you like better, and do you ever miss the other side?
So I will say, I love them both, but I think people that are in the restaurant business, there's this innate passion about having a restaurant. And every time I talk about opening another restaurant, my wife still hollers at me.
She slaps you a little bit. She's like, no.
But it is. It's there will be a time when I have another restaurant, as much as a lot of people wouldn't want to agree with me. I just think it's again, people that love the restaurant business, it's a whole different space. Again, everything from the culture around the restaurant, the people, and the work ethic that it's created for a lot of people. It's just exciting to me. I do consulting periodically for restaurants and franchise companies. I've been on a couple different boards over the last few years. But, manufacturing is different. I like manufacturing. It allowed us to expand a big brand and get it across the country. They both have headaches for sure. And I hate to say it, but over the last year, manufacturing is probably a better space to be in the last year for sure for the employees and everybody else. But because I feel for a lot of my friends in the restaurant business this last year.
Yeah. Well, Brad, you had a fine dining restaurant. So
yeah.
That would have been devastated right now.
Yeah, crushed. It would have been. I'd be out of business probably.
Yeah, you're watching this happen. You're like, holy crap! I'm so happy I'm not in it, and I feel so bad for the people who aren't in it. But so did you bring those up? Did you start from scratch for both of those, or did you buy an existing business and build it?
So the first one that I owned, I bought it. It was failing when I bought it, and we turned it around, and then I sold it after that, and then the next chain we had was a start from scratch. At a partner we got together, and it was a mid-upscale, kind of a higher-end pasta, fresh pasta, Italian atmosphere. We went from down in Warwick, Rhode Island. We were in Warren. We had them New Hampshire. So we ended up putting them all over. That was a from scratch. And then after I sold out of that, I got involved in the foodies restaurants, which were started by a couple pilots, and I bought in as a third partner, and we grew that. So that's kind of how it went.
So when you grew these 8 and then 13, 8 and then 21, were you franchising them, or were you just company owned?
The first round, the 8 were company owned, and then the 21 we built a franchise system, and we grew that. So we owned 5 of the 21 ourselves. Sure. And we were franchising it, and I had 2 of my partners were ex-airline pilots. They were exceptional pilots, not so much great restaurateurs, but great. They were nice guys, and but it was as we got further down the path, and I saw I had started the manufacturing company while we had the restaurants, and I decided to really focus on manufacturing, realizing I couldn't split my time in 8 different ways individually. And so we decided to sell all the restaurants.
Were you happy with the outcome?
Yeah, we actually did very well at the end of the day. it was interesting. None of them are in existence today. And it was really each one of the individuals that acquired them decided to do their own thing and change them a little bit. And it was really interesting to watch how they faded away when people that weren't really didn't understand how to run a restaurant, thought it was just about, bringing the cash over the counter and not managing it and running it the way it needed to be run. So it was a little sad to see them go by the wayside eventually, but most of it was related to them just changing and trying to do things a different way than what they acquired.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I've experienced that myself, where I sold my first restaurant to a gentleman, paid cash for it, like one check, no loan, and he fired the manager almost immediately and changed the products immediately. Thought he knew better than everybody. Said I was running too high of food and labor costs. Anyways, the point is, basically, it took 4 years, but it just, and he eventually just gave it away. He bankrupted it. So word to the wise, don't touch it. If it's working, you can tweak it after like 6 months after you've really been in it, but don't touch it until you know what the hell you're doing.
It's not that different than what we do today in the products that we make. We make premium pizza products today. There's a lot of companies out there that you can buy a frozen topped pizza for $2.99. And the way that we look at our products, it's the same way that we did in the restaurant. It's about making that higher end product, quality ingredients, putting the right amount of time in it to get it there. And we just don't sacrifice it. It's the same thing when I go to restaurants and I watch people in restaurants pulling a bag of stuff and dumping it out instead of taking the time to make a great quality product, charge a few cents more for it, but really deliver on the promise of what you're trying to sell. And it's the same thing we've held true here in the manufacturing side of it. We use the exact same ingredients that the restaurants would use. We're using fresh tomatoes, fresh mushrooms and onions and things like that most manufacturing plants don't want to consider because it's harder. It's not an easy process, but it does make a better product.
So I was under when I went on your, I didn't. The majority of your business is the crust, though, right?
Actually, so we do crust. The Rustic Crust product. It's a product that's made exactly how we used to in the restaurants. And then our American flatbread brand is our frozen brand, the wood-fired frozen. So if you go AmericanFlatbreadProducts.com, brings up all of it. There you go.
Oh, you don't even have them intermingled on one website, huh? It's a completely different business.
Separate brands. Yeah, we try not to confuse people. We've gone back and forth about it. Eventually, you will see on our e-com store, you'll see that show up where we will intermingle them.
So I want to talk about real quick. I just want to talk about where we are right now, which is very important because you're successful. It's a blessing, and I want to hear about that. But I really love to dive deep to all the crap that you had to deal with and the stresses and the problems. I love to hear that because people giving up is very easy these days. Everybody's got scatterbrain. So I want to hear about your story and how you stuck it through. It says 1996, if I'm not correct. 96.
We started in 96, and we started with about 6 employees. And again, it was one of these things where originally we were selling to our own restaurants. And it's funny, if you remember Ground Round that was out there, they were one of my first big accounts. I was friends with the founder of Ground Round. But that's how we started. It was all, a lot of people don't realize when you start it and it's all your money. And you're all in.
Yeah.
And versus, I'll say sometimes, private equity investors, the guys that run those funds, it's not their money. It's easier for them to say, let's just feed it and feed it and feed it. But you've got to understand how to be profitable, how to manage it and grow. But we got into the retail products by right around 2000, 2001, we were starting to develop retail products. And getting into that space, I was used to the restaurant world, so I knew all the way to cost and manage that side of it. I had never thought about selling in the grocery store, and it became a whole new world. And when you think of going into a grocery store and they take all these deductions because you just got on the shelf and the fees and all this, it was just mind-blowing of how much money they could pull out of you. But those were a lot of stressful times in growing the company because we grew pretty fast. Once I developed the first product to go into the retail, it took off. And by 2005, I was running out of money because we were growing so fast. I couldn't keep up with the growth of the business individually. It was more, it needed to plateau. And we actually brought in investors in 2005 to really keep driving the company, put more equipment in, make the facility in better shape. And year over year, we were growing at 40%. And in 2010, we jumped forward is when we got involved with the American Flatbread brand. We acquired the worldwide license to that brand. And again, as part of it, there are restaurants called American Flatbread. And the founder of that company and myself knew each other. And it was a really nice brand in the sense of how it thought about food and how the process. And so we were the first company in the country that I know of to put in a true wood-fired production line. We actually custom built a whole entire line that nobody had ever done in the world or in the United States. And we started making the wood-fired products. And we took that brand, and that brand grew at 40% a year all the way into 2014. And by 2014, we were at 101 people. And in March 7th of 2014, we burned flat to the ground. So when you talk about stress and turmoil, I was in California at a big show where we would show the products, a big natural products expo. And I got the call that the building was on fire. And then by the time I got on a plane to come home, I got a picture of flames coming through the roof, realizing when I got back, there was no business. When you think of perseverance and people that are really willing to drive and deal through the turmoil, I got back and it was the next day I was on site. We had actually construction guys come, and my kind of first comments to everybody was, we're going to be up and running in 30 days. So
they probably didn't believe you.
Nobody believed me. Well, actually, I will say that my CRO, my team believed me. They might have thought I was full of crap at the time, but I think that they all got on board. And April 7th, we were making product in a facility that we built from scratch. And it was because of the team that we pulled together. It was something that, again, I ended up talking about this around the country, but it was the entire team believed. They knew I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to give up on all these employees that we had created jobs for. I started the company where we are. It's an underserved community. It was about creating jobs. But literally, it took us about a week from the time the fire happened to figure out where we could find a space to build a small plant, a temporary plant. And then a friend of mine that had a construction company, he got behind it. And it was like home makeover on super steroids. And on April 7th, 1 month to the day from the fire, we flew one of our top customers in and to show them what we could do. And in 2014, we were up 22% year over year, even with the fire.
Crazy.
There was a lot of headaches that came after it, but it was believing in the people that work here. It was, showing them that I believed, and they all trusted that I was taking them down the right path. And, after it was all done, we took care of all the employees. There wasn't a single person that went unpaid during this whole time. And we had temporary workers. Anybody that had worked for us was paid for the whole time we were closed. And while we were ramping up, nobody that worked for us was out a penny as we did the process. But it was all part of the team really coming together.
But how did you do that? And I know you want to take care of your team, but you also have to take care. If you're not open, then there's no team.
So a lot of it was.
How did you do that?
We were fortunate. We had a insurance policy that we had business interruption coverage with.
Good.
And we were able to manage that very well through the process. A lot of companies out there, whether it's restaurants or mom and pops, whatever it is, a lot of times people will cheap out when they think of insurance. They won't have something that could cover them in the event because something catastrophic happens. And my opinion always was that I want to make sure I'm not overinsured, but I wanted to make sure I was covered if something went crazy, and sure enough, it did. And part of our coverage was it allowed us to handle a lot of these expenses. And in some case, a big part of it was we had to reserve funds at that time that we were able to tap into, because the insurance companies don't like to pay up front and they don't like to pay it all out. But eventually, after about 18 months, we ended up getting paid in full from the insurance company that helped us get through it.
18 months. But see, I want to focus on that, because a lot of times they'll try and get, this is for anybody listening to this, now to the end of the time, they'll try and give you a quick payout to shut you up and leave you alone, so that you can, we'll come clean it real quick and we'll throw you, $150,000, and you're like, you're panicked because your whole business is disrupted, or whatever, $1 million, whatever number that's conservative on their end. And you're like, okay, fine, I need money fast, now I'm screwed. But if you just hold on and you get yourself an adjuster.
So it was interesting you say that, because we'd had a couple catastrophes over time that I dealt with myself. And when we actually burned down, I met a gentleman that was an adjuster, and I'll tell you, they came out of the woodwork. And most of them I just blew off, and I said, look, I'm going to deal with this. And I did connect with one of the guys, and we actually are still to this day really good friends. And he connected, he came in and he really understood our business model as part of it. It wasn't just about the process, but he and myself and the team worked really well at understanding. And out of all of this, the things that paid back or allowed us to get through that tough time, the financial model that we had, we never played games with numbers. We always were accurate. We always budgeted. And when it comes for business interruption coverage, that is the single most important piece if you want to have good coverage as you go forward, because the insurance company is going to try and not pay anything that they don't think they should. And we had very good records. And when they actually came in and agreed to our plan, that they, instead of looking at a prior year sale, which is really unique, our plan was 20 to 40% growth year over year. And they committed because we had hit our numbers and we had forecasted so well that they accepted it. And it's one of the things I talk about a lot when I'm helping people with business is have a plan and hold yourself accountable. Don't put too much pie in the sky. Understand where you can reach, but and manage your business. Don't, too many people are in business and they don't manage their accounts payable. They don't manage the model. Restaurants, it's easy to go haywire. Bars, I mean, I could give you probably know nightmares about bars. So it was one of the experiences when I built the franchise system that really helped that modeling process to, I kind of dumbed it down to the point of trying to teach somebody who's never been in a restaurant that thinks they're going to be a millionaire in 6 months to put the model in place so they could use it. And if they followed it, they'd get there.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was being open and honest as we went through the process. There wasn't a single customer that I didn't personally reach out to during this time. All of our employees, I was talking to all of our employees on a weekly basis. And we have people that work for us from all over the world. And so a lot of them was making sure they were comfortable. They understood where we were going and what we were doing as we went through the process.
Are you worldwide?
No, we're not worldwide. We're nationwide. We sell in a bunch of islands, and we sell through the military in a couple off-site bases with the military. But other than that, I wouldn't call us worldwide.
I'm gonna. Are you in Illinois? Is your product in Illinois?
Yeah, Woodman's. We're in Jewel. We're in.
Okay, I go to Jewel. Yeah. I was like, you know what? I recognize the brand, but I wasn't sure because my wife goes grocery shopping most of the time. Sometimes I do, but I'm like, holy shit, I think I know this. Are you might be in the Jewel, and I go to Target and I see these types of breads, but you're not in Target, are you? We're not
in Target. We did a project for Target quite some years ago, and they decided they didn't want to knock it off with a private label product, but we're currently not in Target. But you'll find us in Whole Foods. Our Rustic Crust product we sell in Walmarts around the country. But you'll see
huge.
that the crust product is in we're in about 2,000 Walmarts around the country.
2,000 Walmarts. I heard they beat you down. How is that? Tell me about your relationship with Walmart.
Walmart, I will say, has been a very good relationship once we understood how the business works. There are challenges, but I think when you understand how their model works, and if you can adapt to that, it can be a win on both sides. We've grown our business year over year, 30% with them. During the pandemic of this last year, the entire business there was up 40% on our the pizza crust business. So it took a while to get there, but I think when we finally understood the best way to do business, I will say for information for my business and the retail business, they share information better than any other retailer in the country that I deal with today. Because I can look up today, if I want to go up and figure out the Wisconsin market, I can pull up all the stores in the Wisconsin, see who has what inventory, how it's selling, because they rely on the manufacturers to help them understand the business as well. And they want you to tell them, oh, this item doesn't sell there, we ought to move it to another store, or we're out of stock. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and having never been in this business before, it took a long time to really get my arms around it and bring the rest of the team in to help get there. And I think that the team that we put together helps us do all these pieces.
So you have 150 total, but how many people are in the office, in the back office?
So in I'll call it the main office, including the sales team, we have about 20 people.
Okay, 20 people.
Yep.
And 20 people. And so you have salespeople. So how did you get such big accounts? Like, for example, Walmart. Did you go to the trade shows and meet the execs, or did you go to those? How did you get that? Because that's like a life-changing. I don't know. Is that like a life-changing opportunity for your company? Was it a life changer?
Yeah, it all changes. I think the way I've always gone about anything I've been involved with is I don't give up.
What?
So I just don't give up.
Oh,
so
relentless.
Again, with Walmart, it started out actually a cold call, just a cold call into the
You
office.
did it, or somebody else did it?
I actually did the first call, and eventually we got an appointment. It took 2 years. I can't tell you how many phone calls and how many different people I talked to. And then when we went in, it was one of these situations where all of a sudden they said yes, and you're like, oh my God, and we do shows around the country, like this event we were at in California when we burned down called Expo West. It's a natural products show. And it's a great place where buyers from all over the world come to see products. And so you get to sample a lot of products there. So that's one way that we would find people. And then as we kept expanding, we have what are called brokers. So they're reps that are out there around the country, and they work with different products. And quite often they'll have a person that goes into the Walmart or the Publix office on a regular basis. And then they start helping you get into what are called category reviews, where you can ask to get on a list. And then somebody will say, yes, I'll agree to talk to them. And then you'll go in and, Publix is a good example. We went with Publix for 8 years in a row before we got on the shelf.
Wow.
And we've hit it out of the park at Publix. We've Whole Foods. We're nationwide with Whole Foods. And
you're in every Whole Foods?
Pretty much every single Whole Foods at this point we're in.
Wow.
The American flatbread product. And it was just, we would perform in an area, and eventually they said, boy, you can warrant going into more stores. And so a lot of it is you have to keep checking with them and following up. And then it's about performance on the products. If the products sell, and you can show the story to the buyers that it should sell in their grocery store, it's up to you to make it happen. They'll put it on the shelf, but at the end of the day, if their consumers don't like the product, they throw you out.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might not be that consumers don't like it. It might be that you didn't do enough to educate people that you're there. And that's a big expense for a lot of companies as you grow.
It's astronomical. How do you do it? What is it packaging? Is it signage? Is it commercials? What do you do?
So again, we've been small. So initially, as we grew, it was through promotions at the grocery store, which a promotion would be a price incentive. So we'd offer a sale, as an example. And in the early years, that was really what we did. And when we finally got to a point that I could hire a full-time marketing person, then we started developing ways to build some outside awareness. So I could send it to your home address, or if you're on Facebook, we do a lot of digital today. Probably 75% of our reach that we try to find new consumers and products is through a digital, whether it could be Facebook, Instagram, or Google. But we're trying to reach out to very specific groups that have decided that they're the top people that go after our product.
Sure.
We'll run, again, incentives. For us, we're an expensive frozen pizza. We run, for our large pizza, we run between $9.49 and $10.49 for a frozen pizza, when you could buy a Tony's for $3.99.
Three for 10.
Right. And so a lot of people, there's a risk. When you see it, you might like the package, you might like what it looks like. But we will go out, we'll offer somebody a trial, maybe a $5 off, because we want them to try it. And quite often we find, because people will write us all the time, I never thought frozen pizza could be this good, or I can't believe this is a frozen pizza. And so that's what happens when we get people locked in that really appreciate the quality side of it. We're never going to be a DiGiorno or some of these really large brands, but we're not trying to be. We're trying to make sure we make a very consistent, high quality product.
Do you make the flatbreads and the frozen pizzas in the same facility?
Yes. So we have two facilities. So when we had our fire, we kept the small facility. So we, depending on the building, we have between 3 and 4 lines at a time that we can run, and we can run a mix of products. And what's really interesting with us, we go all the way from wheat-based products. We're certified to run gluten-free products, which means our cleaning process and the way we test our equipment and everything about the products certifies us to be gluten-free when we run those products. And then we go to the level of running allergen-friendly, like a vegan or plant-based products. So it's a wide range of products that we produce.
So Brett, as an entrepreneur, and maybe you don't suffer from this, but you probably do. How hard is it? I mean, maybe it's easier now because you're doing. Maybe it's harder now. I don't know. Saying no. So like, you got the manufacturing. You got all these equipment that you can retool very easily and make a whole bunch of different products. And you could have you could start a bunch of different companies out of one facility if you wanted to, I think. Or you're constantly getting people, cousins, family, friends, people on LinkedIn, reaching out to you to invest or do other projects. And you're probably an ideas guy. If you're anything like most entrepreneurs, you're an ideas man. You love ideas. You feed off of the energy. And it's hard for you to just stay in one spot and keep riding the wave, because it's a good wave, but you get excited about other things in life. Do you suffer from that? And how do you control yourself?
So I do a lot of mentoring, and I participate in not necessarily board of directors, but overseeing groups to help other companies get going. I probably have, through LinkedIn now, 15 people a week reach out asking about different projects. And so there's two parts where in the earlier days, to grow the business and create cash flow, I was always reaching at the next opportunity to fill the plant up, to pay bills, because it was if I didn't pay the bills, I didn't have a house to live in. And so we did that a lot. And as we've expanded, we've become a little more focused on what it takes to run a product here in the facility. But there's not a day that goes by that I'm not thinking about either new flavors, or we've got some pretty crazy products that I have crazy ideas that I could add that we're thinking about. But at the same time, I talk to people all the time about different venture ideas. I've invested in a few other smaller companies. Some of them didn't work out, but it happens. It's just, I've had a couple projects that I've done that didn't work out over time. But it's at a point in time, I'm always willing to look at some other opportunity. When this one decides to move on to the next level, that I'll decide, geez, I'm going to go do something different. But there's still a lot of excitement here. we're kind of at that curve or the opportunity where we start seeing all these new opportunities for products and how we can get better food, better ingredients out there for anybody to eat that just tastes better. And more often when I can find a way to get it there for a very fair cost, I get more excited because it opens opportunities for other people to have these products compared to highly processed items that are on the shelf today. If we can use non-GMO ingredients and avoid processing aids and get these out to consumers, and I can be competitive as we get bigger, it allows me to be more competitive. I think it's a really exciting place to be. But yeah, I've helped people with internet projects to a lot of different food products that I see. I've been on the board of a wine company. At one point I owned a brewery. So yeah, it's a lot of different ideas.
Yeah, so you do have, but you through mentorship and through realize, you've had a couple of small failures and kind of like, hey, let me focus on the bread and butter. Let me stay focused on what's working instead of being distracted by the shiny red ball. Is that a good paraphrase?
It's the easy way to fail. You get too distracted. And honestly, I have this little process I go through on a month-to-month basis. All these things that have piled up on my desk that I eventually say, these aren't important. They're distracting. I have to move on to the next. And, it's always good to keep looking because the ones that sit still, you fall behind. And if you have to always be thinking about how you're moving ahead, how are you changing with the times and meeting what your consumers are looking for.
So when you first started and you didn't have any employees, it was just you, or maybe you had like a first, but what's the most important employee that you feel like the first two hires? Would it be a financial guy or a sales guy or both? What would you recommend for early stage companies where you can't afford to have a bunch of people?
So if I'm going to pick two people, and I guess no matter what, you have to trust them. And I'll take trust over a lot of things any other day of the week. And so my first plant manager that I had was somebody who had worked for me in the restaurant business for a long time. And he moved up with us. Eventually, he got married and moved on. But having somebody that's willing to listen and follow your vision is the most important piece. But the right-hand person for an operations side, and the next key person is somebody, if you can't do the finances, I have a very strong financial acumen, but at the same time, you can't do it all. And the lady that I have as a controller today in this company has been with us since 2005. And when I look at what that relationship and how well she has done with us as a company, she's seen the vision from day one, and she's seen the culture, and she believes it. And I mean, it's that trust that there's anybody in my top team today, I'd give them the keys to my cars, I'd give them my checkbook, and I trust them. And we don't second guess each other. I think that's just really the part of it. I don't really care about titles.
Yeah.
Personally. It's about let's get it done. Let's move ahead and let's win for everybody. And that's really what I've tried to do.
That's good, great advice. But I want to dive in just a little bit deeper. When you say, so earlier you said, you don't really care about titles, and I agree with that. The bottom line is, but don't you feel a little exposed when you bring in people and they know your numbers, they see you're hemorrhaging cash, or you're making a lot of cash, or whatever? It's like you're almost worried to like open your books and let people underneath your secrets. I don't know if it's secrets, but it's a weird environment. Like CFOs, they're doing forecasting and this and that, and you're like, I don't want you to touch my stuff. Even if you're not doing that good, you just feel weird about it. I suffer from that personally. How do you
it's a tough move. And I'll say back in the restaurant days, it was one of the things that helped us get very successful with the managers that would run the restaurants. And again, I did a lot of offline consulting in between this process. And one of the things I found with restaurants that were successful and restaurants that were failing, the restaurants where somebody was stealing from them all the time, the owners were spending too much time trying to figure out how do I stop the stealing and what is it? And then the other ones, there were these guys that were just like trying to micromanage everything, and they were failing because they weren't allowing people to manage. We started really sharing, like I do today. There's not a person here that doesn't see our forecast, And they don't, it's when I start showing them the expectation and the fact that I don't get paid. I mean, I went years without taking paychecks, and I never felt bad showing somebody that. I never once missed a payroll before anything else. I stretched out other payments, but showing people that it's real money on the line. I'm not just like grabbing and not helping them move ahead. But at the same time, when we're doing well and we're saying, this is how you participate, and when we do well, you're always going to get these people that feel I should make way more because I'm just there. But sometimes those people didn't participate in that risk. But at the same time, we lost $3 million one year.
Oh.
And, I shared it with people wanting to know, well, why can't we get bonuses? And when it comes down to it, you share it and say, these things happen to cause us to lose money. You didn't have to put any of this money. The senior ownership of the company covered all these losses, but it's real losses. And this is how we're going to move ahead. Maybe you participated in what caused it or not, but we're moving ahead. And I just always felt that the more we share it and people can understand the how and the whys, it has always been successful for me. And I see other companies that don't share it all. And there's always this question of, oh yeah, he's making all this kind of money. Maybe he's not.
Yeah. My dad always said, it's not the top line revenue that counts.
Right.
Where's the beef at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, what goes in the bank? How do you pay the people? And when we made the decision to pay all our people, I wasn't taking any money out during that time. My ex-wife used to always complain when I would forego my paycheck to make sure everybody else got paid as we were growing because we needed to get another grocery store on it. We needed to do something to grow the business. It comes back, and it really is. It's having a model that you trust, making sure you have the right components. There may be certain things that you don't share with people, but for the most part, especially all the way down to our operations team, they get to see it all. We share the results. Sometimes when you have bad performance for extended periods of time, it can hurt things. But as long as you're trying to help solve the problem with them, you do what you got to do.
Are you a believer that sales cures most ailments?
Profitable sales do. I have a friend that has a dog treat company based out of Seattle, and they've struggled for a long time. And his team developed a new product that had a very high margin because they were selling on everything they were selling at a big retailer was really low profit. And so they brought this product in, and the retailer says, okay, I'll put it in. And the goal was this new item had the appropriate margin mix of profit. And the buyer just, I'd really like to see it at this price. So instead of thinking, he just thought they're going to take it and I'm going to get all these dollars. He agreed to a lower price. He's going out of business today. And that was the nail in the coffin. They had the opportunity. So it wasn't just about sales, because you have to understand your products and what the profitability is of those products. Sometimes, like anybody else, you'll have a loss leader, but you really have to understand where the pennies are going. And if you don't, eventually it's going to catch you. There's ups and downs for sure, but generally top line sales helps with almost anything.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just pushes off the end.
Yeah.
Especially I see that in the restaurants where, especially the restaurant business where folks are not on an accrual, they're just on a cash basis, and they keep seeing the cash. They're not realizing how many of these bills are not getting paid until it gets too late. And,
Yeah. I always say, well, don't worry about how much money is coming in. Worry about how much money is going out. Because if you're not taking care of your core, prime cost, you cannot survive.
And we see this in the retail space. And we were just joking about this about an hour ago, where some retailers in the marketplace talk about selling units. I've never seen somebody put a unit in the bank. And because we typically will sell less units than some of our competitors, but the penny profit on our units, in some cases, one of our units creates 3 times the penny profit of another unit. And I always, some retailers really get it, but some retailers, because of the structure they have, they're all about how many units or cases do you sell, or how many pounds. And a pound isn't always a pound. So it's really important to understand that.
2 quick questions. What percentage of your sales is coming from the flatbreads versus the other company, the frozen pizza section?
So our frozen business is probably 70% of our business today.
Wow.
It is the fastest growing part of our business. Again, it goes back to, it's a higher priced item. So it generates, again, it utilizes a lot more resources, but it's a higher, in our world, frozen pizza, everybody knows where to find frozen pizza in a grocery store. And sometimes the pizza crust could be in 15 different locations in grocery stores. So it's not as rigid of a category in the grocery store business.
Yeah. I opened, my first restaurant was a bar. I purchased a bar restaurant. And we used to make everything from scratch, from the dressings to the rib tips, the ribs, the 2 types of dough, sauce, everything. Then I said that when I sold that one for top dollar right before the economic crash, thank God I lucked out. And I wanted to start a small pizzeria, and I didn't want to make everything from scratch because it was just too much work. And I felt like the labor was going higher, so it didn't really make as much sense. So I decided let's see what would happen if I started using pre-made dough crust. So I don't have to buy a mixer, it'll help with the labor. I didn't end up liking it, but I did it for about 1.5 years in a place called Pinocchio's Pizza in the city. And I was buying from Restaurant Depot. And I was buying these 10, 12, 14, 16-inch circles, frozen. And then you just sauce them and throw them in the oven with whatever toppings and cheese. But it just didn't taste right. And I always said to myself, they have frozen dough. They have frozen dough balls. But it never tastes. You can't really, for a Chicago pizzeria, you just can't get away with it. Right. How about now? Has it gotten better? I haven't touched it in a long time. Do you know any commercial pizzerias using it?
We actually have some. I guess the approach we take, yes, I know a bunch of commercial using either a dough ball or a crust. We have some products that we sell for restaurants, and I have a restaurant chain that wanted that concept because they're developing and they're doing these small format, and they had come to us. And so it's actually a pizza that's grilled and then fried in a like a seared. And we came up with a process to help them make that. So depending on the restaurant, we've done a lot with some really large national chains that I make some products that they sell today, but those are mostly casual dining restaurants.
Yeah.
Regular pizza locations, as far as chain wise, that are successful, most of them are using a dough, a frozen dough, slack out dough. You'll see some of these, at the airport. There's a few of them in the airports around, but there are not many pizza restaurants that are going to use a crust. Most of the crust products get used in regular restaurant food service or venues that are large venues, but it's what made us different in the approach that we use to make our different doughs. We make all of our doughs just like somebody would for a restaurant. And that's what's really made us stand out over the years since I started the company. So we age all of our dough versus there's a really large pizza company out of the Midwest that sells to restaurants, and most of their dough, it gets mixed. It has all these additives put in it, and it's either cut out with a die, like a cookie cutter die, or it's just stamped out. But it's all done within a matter of an hour. Most of our
not letting the yeast rise properly and ferment.
And so you lose a lot of that when you buy, I'm going to say, just the average off the shelf type of crust. The flavor that you're talking about, when in the products, is what's made us unique. We have 3 to 4 proprietary processes that we came up with that evolved from our restaurants to manufacturing, but a lot of it is how we age and handle our dough. So it ferments for a long time, from 18 to 24 hours for our frozen.
Yeah.
And anywhere from, 6 to 14 hours for our regular products. And that adds, without adding additives, it adds a lot of flavor. And where you can get some weird flavors is when you have these dough shells or pizza shells that are rushed through and they're trying to be done really inexpensively. That's where you get these off flavors. And then the trouble is everybody on the street that is selling the same product. You're just putting different toppings on. So you're not unique in a restaurant.
No, you're not. And so when you were saying, to make these doughs and to put the sauce on there and the products and then the cheese, I think the hardest part about frozen dough is the cheese, because it always has a weird frozen pizza. It always has a weird melting. It looks just, you know how it is. It just doesn't melt properly. How do you get around that? Because you're a restaurant guy. You probably bothers you.
So the way that when we make our frozen pizzas, so a lot of cheese that people use, they're using cheese that has an anti-caking product in it called cellulose.
Yeah.
In our facility today, we're making it exactly how somebody would make in a restaurant. We don't allow any cellulose products. We're shredding fresh whole milk mozzarella, and we have a grana padano, Asiago that goes into it, and it gets mixed as it goes to the line, and it's mixed within 30 minutes of it being put on a pizza. And so literally our process of doing it is identical to how somebody would be doing it in a restaurant. And we're not trying to put something in it that's going to make it taste funny. There's not an ingredient we have in this building that I wouldn't put in my mouth right off the table. And it's a big part. If you ever buy shredded cheese and you shake a bag, you look at all that powder. Some people say, "Oh, it's Parmesan." No, it's called an anti-caking device. It's cellulose or a product like that keeps it from sticking together. That's really the key.
That is the key. That is definitely the key. And so anybody listening to this, that definitely, if you're ever gonna make pizza at home or you want to make a grilled cheese, do not use the pre-shredded. You got to shred it yourself or buy the slices from the deli. So when you earlier when we were talking, you said in Jewel. Are you talking about the pizza crust or the actual frozen pizzas in Jewel?
The frozen pizzas in Jewel. I'd have to go to our website to pull up all the stores.
No big deal. No big deal. I'm just curious because I'm gonna go get it. I'm gonna go eat it. I'll let you know. I mean, believe it or not, I own a bunch of pizzas. I still buy frozen pizza too.
I eat pizza everywhere I go. It's it's funny. It's at home. I have a wood-fired pizza oven at home on the backyard, and where my wife, it's funny, she likes to eat pizza today quite a bit, so it works out well. But it's what it is. It's just one of those foods. When you think of all the different ways you can put really cool toppings, and you can make it different for breakfast, for lunch. I mean, it's one of these foods that you can be as healthy as you want it to be, or as horrible as you want it to be. If you go
so before I got to this interview, I have 3 daughters. We 9, 5, and 4. My wife's not feeling great, so I said, let's go get some pizza. So we went to my favorite local, because I don't live next to my own pizza places. I went to the local place, Rosati's Pizza, which you may have heard of before. And we went there. We had dough nuggets, which is just dough fried up, and then pizza. We had 4 quarters differently. One's got pepperoni and onions. One's just got pepperoni. One's got cheese. One's got So it's so versatile. And frozen, old pizza, cold pizza, hot pizza, spicy pizza, it doesn't matter. So that's why it's the best business in the world. And there's so much room for everybody to make money if you do it right. It's a wonderful product, and it's a wonderful industry. But I like your industry more. I'll tell you why. Because I love all industries where you can be centrally located and have the nationwide territory, right? You're focusing on one. When you're building a bunch of brick and mortar, your costs stay consistent no matter where you go, as opposed to your fixed costs will continuously go down the more volume you sell. You know what I mean? So that's how I look at it. But that's why we also have a marketing company that I figured, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a marketing company as well, which goes with pizza. Right. But, trying to stay away from shiny red balls has always been my issue. But I have definitely, I've cut it all out now. Now I'm focused on Papa Ray's Pizza and the marketing company, and I'm sticking with it. And then the podcast, the podcast is just talking to amazing people like you coming on the store and sharing your story. I mean, it's awesome. I really appreciate you coming on, Brett.
Well, thank you for having me. This was great.
Yeah,
I
and
enjoyed
let's stay in touch. I'll send you an email. I'll send you a picture of me and my kids eating your pie.
Please do. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Thanks, Brad. You have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.